Everybody knows the story of Adam and Eve, but no one can tell you what happened to the first man and woman once they shuffled off this mortal coil. Why? Well, the answer is a little complicated. Plenty of schools of thought don't in fact believe that the Bible is meant to be taken literally. This applies to the book of Genesis as much as any other part of the Bible, where taking the events of creation as literal truth not only runs against the facts of evolution, but invites all manner of questions about populating the earth that Genesis can't answer. But there's another question, spiritual question, that hovers over the beginning of Genesis, however it's interpreted. Everyone knows at least the basics of the first chapters, that God, after creating heaven and earth and all manner of living things, made man and woman, Adam and Eve, and set them up in a paradise until they fell into temptation and were cast out.
Eve was not present when God warned Adam not to eat the forbidden fruit. But it's clear from the Bible she knew about the warning.
In Christian thinking, this puts the stain of original sin on all humanity. In the wilderness, Adam and Eve birthed Abel and Cain, whose act of murder divided the family of man, and many other sons and daughters before Adam died at the age of 930, or so says Genesis 5. And what happened to Adam and Eve after they died? That is the unanswered spiritual question of Genesis. And as with the issue of whether Genesis or the Bible is meant to be taken as a literal history, the answer depends on which faith you ask. Nowhere in the Bible does it say what fate befell Adam and Eve in the afterlife. As the progenitors of original sin, their actions have enduring consequences for all humanity in Christian doctrine. As the first humans, they would never have known Jesus. Whether they or anyone who lived and died before the birth of Christ knew him is a profound issue in Christianity. In Catholicism, where the concept of limbo exists, Adam and Eve presumably went there after death, along with Moses, Noah, David, and other souls, until Jesus descended into the realm of the dead. The Catechism of the Catholic Church declares that Jesus, quote, opened heaven's gates for the just who had gone before him. Whether Adam and Eve would be counted among the just, however, is a separate issue. Some Christians point to various passages in the Bible as indicators that Adam and Eve obtained salvation. Psalms, Romans, and Hebrews discuss the righteousness of patriarchs like Noah and Abraham, the pleasing sacrifice of Abel, and the promise of faith and grace, which many take as evidence for Adam and Eve's place in heaven. Even Genesis has been cited in support of the idea, with God's gifting of clothing taken as mercy and his decrees to man, woman, and the serpent taken as a gift of the first gospel to Adam and Eve. Another biblical passage cited to support Adam and Eve's being in heaven is 1 Peter chapter 3, which states, "He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. He went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago." While some interpret this passage as meaning that Jesus shared the gospel with the dead and offered the path to salvation, others think that 1 Peter confirms that Jesus proclaimed judgment to the dead. In other words, their ultimate fate was already decided and immutable. If Adam and Eve were bound for hell, that was that. And there are those who believe hell is where Adam and Eve were bound. By bringing sin into the world, they are considered doomed. It's not a popular view, but it is out there. The definition of hell, however, is not consistent across time and denominations. For Britannica, the word hell was originally a generic term for the underworld, the abode of all the buried dead. This fits some conceptions of Sheol, the land of the dead described in the Old Testament. The Old Testament in general has little to say about the afterlife, and Jewish notions of life after death vary. One tradition holds that Sheol, or hell, or whatever term one prefers, is a holding place for the dead until the coming of the Messiah. Then all souls will reunite with their bodies for final judgment. And some Christians hold that Adam and Eve would have gone to such a hell and been condemned were it not for salvation through Jesus.